What if everything you've been told about success is wrong? What if the secret isn't about specializing early, but about wandering, trying, failing, and exploring? In a world obsessed with experts, the greatest breakthroughs often come from generalists, people who zig when everyone else zags. So, why does range, not depth, give you the ultimate edge? When we think of greatness, we think of Tiger Woods. Golf club in hand before he could walk. Practiced endlessly. Mastered his craft early. That's the classic model. Start young. Specialize. Grind. Dominate. But here's another path. Roger Federer. He played multiple sports as a kid. Tennis was just one of many. He didn't specialize until his late teens. David Epstein calls this the Tiger versus Roger dilemma. And it sets the stage for his book, Range. It's a deep dive into why the world rewards generalists. People who explore more, learn broadly, and connect ideas from different domains. In a world obsessed with experts, Range argues, breadth beats depth. Let's explore why.
Why starting early isn't always an advantage. We love early starters, prodigies. As kids, we assume that the earlier someone begins, the better they'll become. And sometimes this works. In golf, in chess, in classical music, where rules are stable, feedback is instant, and repetition sharpens skill. These can be called kind learning environments. They're structured, predictable. Practice leads to mastery. But most of life isn't golf. It's messy, ambiguous, unstable, what can be called a wicked learning environment. Here, early specialization can backfire. Because narrow training doesn't prepare you for complexity. The world changes, and specialists get stuck.
Let's take a look at two different personality types in this context. Roger Federer played basketball, soccer, and badminton as a kid. Only later did he fall in love with tennis. This sampling period allowed him to develop diverse motor skills, mental adaptability, and most importantly, joy. Tiger Woods, on the other hand, had no sampling. He was built to specialize. But most people, they're not tigers, they're Rogers. And forcing early commitment too soon can kill curiosity and limit long-term growth. The takeaway? Exploration builds match quality, the fit between your abilities and your choices, and that leads to longer success. Well, the examples we saw tell us about the paradox of quick learning and why slow learners win. Here's a paradox. The faster you learn something, the quicker you forget it. In one study, students who used flashcards and drills learned fast, but retained little. Another group used varied, effortful practice. They struggled more up front, but remembered much longer. This is called desirable difficulty. It's messy learning, nonlinear, confusing, slow, but it's the kind of learning generalists thrive in. Why? Because they connect ideas across domains, not just repeat procedures.
Another important reason why generalists thrive is the power of borrowed brilliance. Let's have a look at it. Specialists get trapped in their box. They solve every problem with the same tool. If all you have is a hammer, you know how it ends. Generalists use analogical reasoning. They borrow ideas from different domains. This is how NASA engineers solved oxygen problems on Apollo 13. How designers improve hospitals by studying racing pit crews. How successful investors think more like poker players than economists. Connecting ideas across disciplines is what unlocks insight, and generalists do it best. Whereas, when it comes to specialists, they are considered to be the ideal people in the eyes of the world, as they take a path which is challenging for most of us. That is to be gritty and stick to the challenge, unless they have a solution. As we love the idea of grit. Stick to it. Power through. Winners never quit, right? Well, not always. In a study of elite athletes, those who quit early, the ones who tried different sports before specializing, actually outperformed those who stuck with one. Why? Because they didn't waste time forcing the wrong fit. They sampled, pivoted, and found what matched them best. Grit isn't bad, but blind persistence is. Knowing when to quit is just as important as knowing when to push.
Have you ever heard of the term, an outsider's advantage? In science, innovation often comes from outsiders, from people who aren't trained to think the right way. In one study, a genetics problem was solved by a physicist. Why? Because he brought different tools and a fresh perspective. Generalists win not because they know more, but because they know differently. They ask questions specialists wouldn't. They make connections others overlook. In complex environments, outside thinking is often the advantage. Not just the complex environments, even when it comes to innovation. Ever hear of Nintendo? They didn't invent powerful hardware. They used outdated technology in creative ways, like turning old sensors into motion-based game controls. This is lateral thinking with withered technology, not newer tech, smarter use of old tech. Generalists are masters of this because they don't rely on just one skill. They combine and remix. Innovation isn't always invention. Sometimes it's reinterpretation.
When it comes to life, for most of us, success looks like a straight line. Decide, study, work, arrive. But the reality is a jungle gym. Twists, pauses, detours. David Epstein calls this the dark horse path. When people explore widely, before they find their fit, they might feel behind, but they're not. They're building, arrange, and in the long run they often win because their careers match who they truly are. That is the hidden power of a messy career. Here's what data shows. Athletes, professionals, and creators who specialize later often go further. Why? They've sampled more. They know their preferences. They've developed adaptability. In sports, late specializers are more likely to reach elite levels because they avoided burnout, injuries, and narrow skills. In careers, people who pivot early find better matches. They grow faster once they lock in. So starting slow can mean finishing strong. Let's return to this idea. Kind environments have clear rules and instant feedback, like chess or golf. But wicked environments? They're unpredictable. They give delayed or even misleading feedback, like business, relationships, medicine, or leadership. In wicked environments, narrow expertise can fail because the patterns don't repeat. Generalists thrive here because they don't rely on pattern recognition. They adapt on the fly.
The skill most specialists never learn is to apply knowledge across contexts. They learn in the lab, but not in the field. Generalists practice learning transfer, taking skills from one area and applying them somewhere else. For example, musicians often outperform others on memory tests. Why? Because their skills transfer. Same with athletes who play multiple sports. Their bodies and brains become more flexible. It's not how much you know, it's how far you can stretch it. Did you know that? There's a competition called the Good Judgment Project. People predict global trends, economics, politics, science. Guess who wins? Not the experts, not the PhDs, but curious, open-minded generalists. Why? They think in probabilities. They update beliefs. They seek disconfirming evidence. They're slow to conclude, but quick to adapt. Epstein calls this active open-mindedness, and it's a superpower in uncertain worlds.
In this uncertain world, the society has unconsciously taught us a habit that can kill us. I mean, literally. In wildfires, firefighters sometimes die. Not because of the flames, but because they won't drop their tools. They're trained to hold on to gear, to obey habits, even when it's deadly. This is a metaphor for specialist rigidity. People cling to what they know, even when it stops working. Generalists? They're more willing to change tools, drop assumptions, shift strategy. Survival and success often comes from letting go. To elaborate more on that, in psychology, there's a concept called possible selves. These are the different identities you could become: athlete, artist, entrepreneur, teacher, explorer. Generalists explore more of them. They try, they test, they taste life across the spectrum. This gives them more data, more insight, more clarity. And when they finally commit, it's from wisdom, not pressure. When we look at creative breakthroughs, scientific innovation, startup founders, athletes, leaders, there's a surprising theme. Many of them took winding paths. They didn't climb a ladder. They built a map. They explored first, then focused. And that made their work deeper, wiser, and more resilient. That's the core idea of this book. Depth is good, but breadth makes it powerful. Explore widely, learn slowly, connect broadly, then go deep. It's not anti-specialization. It's a strategic specialization after exploration. To conclude the learnings, I would like to say that if you feel behind, don't. If your career path looks messy, good. If you're still exploring, keep going. Range shows us that the winding path is often the wiser one. In a world that rushes to label and narrow, the future belongs to the broad, the curious, the cross-disciplinary, to those who embrace range.